Doug Gottlieb, kind enough to join us on loan from Fox Sports. All right, what is important at the NBA Combine, Doug?
I think it depends on who you are. Like the measurables aren't terribly important for some guys, but if you come across as a guy who's not particularly long, like take Trae Young for example, right? So he's the new Steph Curry, but he's not as tall and not as long, and my guess would be not quite as athletic. So he's a just slightly shorter version of the guy we've seen win 2 MVPs, and you kind of got to take the leap, whereas a Colin Sexton, who's up about the same height, maybe even a little bit smaller, he's got longer arms. So you have to kind of you have to formulate in your mind what that looks like 2, 3, 4 years down the road. Mo Bamba, we knew was a freak of nature in terms of his length and athleticism. I think for a guy like Grayson Allen, everybody knows Grayson Allen can really jump, but the fact that I think he had the best lateral agility score, that's really important. Because you guys remember Chase Budinger from Arizona?
Yeah.
He's a great volleyball player.
He could jump.
But being able to jump, that's not really that as important as lateral quickness in the NBA. And for Grayson, if he's going to play in the NBA, he's going to be a 2, and as a 2, you got to be able to move. How do you move laterally? And he and DiVincenzo are tremendous athletes, not just vertically but laterally. So, different things matter to different people. I wish more of the top guys would play. Like, I don't know, basketball players play basketball. I kind of thought that's the whole deal. But those are the things that matter. It's very much case dependent.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure this out. And I know that, the mothership's trying to make something out of the NBA Combine, but I'm just trying to figure out what I glean from this where I go, okay, that's important. I think height, I think the wingspan is important too. I like that with these guys, depending on the position, but it feels like the game is, we're moving towards the longer player, the perimeter player, the taller guy who can shoot threes. So that's, if Markelle Fultz, that's the surprising part. Markelle Fultz goes number 1 when you look at the NBA, and the NBA, the future of it is not Markelle Fultz, it's more Jason Tatum.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is about, can you have a guard that can go downhill and that can make plays for himself and for others? And look, last year I joined you and I told you Jason Tatum was the most ready to play. Did I think he would be this good or this impactful? No. It should be pointed out, I don't think he would be this good or this impactful had Gordon Hayward not gotten hurt, right? Like, that actually ended up benefiting him because now all of a sudden he had to play much, greater minutes earlier on in his career. So, look, you're right in that the NBA is working the way of the hybrid forward, and that's where Danny Ainge and his team, they were ahead of everybody else. Last year when they reformulated the roster, they had a bunch of little guards, and they got rid of several guards to get these hybrid forwards. That is the way the league's working, but it also is working with the non-traditional point guard. Can you score? And Fultz still has that ability. We'll see if he gets his jump shot back. We'll see how his body develops. But, I had guys who were, part of draft rooms and in those workouts, and they said, look, he was far and away the best guard last year. It's a reason that he was so well sought after. And maybe the other part to the draft is there's 2 great rookies out of this draft. But there's a lot of rookies that weren't very good out of the draft last year, and I kind of feel like we're going to end up working that way with this draft. Michael Porter Jr. is a guy who, some think is going to, creep in the top 3 or top 4, even though he barely played at Missouri because of the back injury, and he's that hybrid forward. But, when you get past those top 5 or 6 guys, maybe 8 guys, this is not that deep a draft to where in the 20s you're going to get a guy who's going to be a rotation guy.
Remember how badly Kevin Durant performed at the Combine when he couldn't bench 185 pounds, and then people go, boy, how's he going to survive in the NBA? Does it really matter?
I don't. I thought it mattered at that point a little bit, but yeah. But on the other hand, he's also a 7-footer who can shoot threes.
Yeah.
So, again, it's case dependent. Does it matter to him? No, but it depends on who you are, right? Like if you're, I hate to go back to Trae Young, but the way everybody plays in the NBA now is you switch everything, and who's he going to switch and guard? And look, that's the problem that the Cavs have. Honestly, I know you're talking about, Alyssa, you're talking about Steph Curry, whether or not he's hurt. I mean, I'd have to think it's a combination of he's still a little dinged up, and it's not necessarily dinged up. It's you can't go from rehabbing to playing the playoffs. The level of intensity is so great that you're just, you're always trying to kind of play catch up. But the biggest thing is they just keep going at him defensively, and that wears you down.
Yeah.
If you're a guard who's going to be 6 feet tall and play in the NBA, you got to be tougher than a $2 steak. There's a reason that the delis of the world can last. There's a reason that you got to be a tough sucker, and I don't know if we have that. And if you show that you're not strong, it shows, one, you have to add strength, but can you add that strength and keep your jump shot? That's a big question.
We're talking to Doug Gottlieb, Fox Sports, joining us. If you had the top pick in the draft, who are you taking?
I'm taking Marvin Bagley. Now, I understand that you have other hybrid forwards with the Phoenix Suns. I think he's the best prospect. And you talk about the way the NBA is going. I know DeAndre is a freak of nature, and his body looks – he looks like the after picture, right? Bamba looks like the before, he looks like the after. But – centers in the NFL, centers in the NBA are like middle linebackers in the NFL, right? Or running backs, maybe. It's a glamour position, but is it absolutely going to help you? You have to have one to win a championship. Now, the one caveat I would put on that, Dan, is the Phoenix Suns are horrific defensively, and they need somebody to protect the rim. But he's not really a true natural shot blocker. He does a little bit of everything well. I would go with Bagley because Bagley can play 2 or maybe 3 positions in the NBA. He should be eventually able to guard at least 2 positions in the NBA. I don't think he'll ever play, like a rim protecting 5. But if you can get Chris Bosh, you take him, and I think that's what Bagley at worst, well, maybe at worst, at best probably becomes a really productive Chris Bosh. I'm more of a Bagley guy. Everybody's talking about Doncic and talking about Ayton. I would even consider Colin Sexton with the right team, just because I think he has a chance to be a dynamic lead guard that can guard, create shots, and is tough as hell. Those are the guys that I'd go with Bagley.
Yeah, you can't take Sexton number 1.
Probably not, but no. I remember back when you and I were at the mothership, and remember when Andrew Bogut went number 1 overall?
Yeah.
Okay? And I think Marvin Williams went 2 overall. And 3 and 4, I forget the year, were Darren Williams and Chris Paul. And I wrote a piece for ESPN.com, and I was like, look, those guys are good and they're big and whatever, but the league is about it's about guys that can create shots themselves, guys that create shots for others, and I still think that's more important. And so I understand that Ayton, as a center, can play both ends of the floor. He can protect the rim. He can shoot out to college 3 now. Eventually, he'll be shooting pro 3s. But I do think, as good as Clint Capella is, at some point he becomes fairly useless because they got to go PJ Tucker as like your undersized center. You're talking about Draymond Green is your center for the Golden State Warriors. Nobody scores with their back to the basket. Now, the only other part to that is, you and I have talked about this, is with the Joel Embiids of the world, with the developing big guys, does it come back around that you have to have a big guy to compete? But to this point, I would go with the hybrid forward, which is where we discard in a Marvin Bagley first. I would go with a lead guard second, and I would go with a center third, position dependent. The problem is that Ayton is a remarkable prospect. He played, obviously, at Arizona. The owner is an Arizona alum. And it feels like the team needs a center, even with Dragan Bender really improving at the end of the year.
Doug, thanks for calling in. Have a good weekend. We appreciate it.
Do I actually agree with McLovin on this thing, though, by the way? I think McLovin, he's got on his big board, he's got Bagley 1. This is a first.
Dan, you didn't know I had a big board,
I did not. I didn't know you had a small board either.
Yeah. He's got his board's quite big. A lot of people talk about how big his board is, actually. Dan.
Wow.
It's a little uncomfortable.
Wow. All right. Well, I guess you and great minds think alike, Doug. You and McLovin.
There we go. Me and McLovin on an island together. That's the beginning of a really bad movie.
Thank you, Doug. That's Doug Gottlieb.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.